ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Inside Tack, our continuation of our debrief from our day's sailing. And we have just finished the preliminary regatta. God, that's a mouthful. I'll put my teeth back in. For the 37th America's Cup. As you know, this is the warm-up regatta. This was the non-point scoring regatta as we gear up for the racing and the point scoring starting properly on Thursday. Wow, that feels like something saying we're starting the round robin properly on Thursday. The last 6 months has flown by, but we've had a really interesting 4 days. As you know, we've had three race days in Derby, in flattish water, in a pretty locked-in sea breeze direction where there hasn't been much overtaking on the racecourse. Now, those of you that will have viewed the racing today, we had the breeze out the east, a shifty and puffy breeze out the east, a massive sea state. And I think that our guests Lee McMillan and Ian Williams will agree that that was a proper good day of racing, right, Lee?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Good to get that in at the end of the regatta. A bit of a change of situation, so we can kind of take the learnings from that moving into the round robin, like you say. But it was wavy, puffy, shifty, like really hard to make the jib calls before the race because the breeze built right up and then dropped off again. But we got that one right, and managed to come away with the win, which was great.
There you go. Well, Ian, we'll roll through the results from today. So the first match was New Zealand versus the USA. I didn't watch this. I was doing my warm-up bit for the lads on the boat. The USA took the win. Give us the rough shakedown of that race.
Yeah, great race for the USA. They were faultless. I was going to say I think they were the only team not to make an error today.
Right.
All the other teams made what would have looked like pretty big errors, but obviously very difficult in the conditions. Whereas USA today, they killed it. So good, great job by them.
And then Prada, the Italians, went on to beat Alinghi, the Swiss. And I saw out the corner of my eye a lot of lead changes there and big differences in the leads as well, right?
Yeah, Luna Rossa got a bit caught up on the start and had quite a big deficit. That was right. They got hooked and left over the line at start time, and then they tried to dip the line. They didn't make it. Then they ended up having to jibe around and come all the way back. Whoa. So huge deficit off the line. But unfortunately for Alinghi, they had a wobbly jibe in a bit more breeze. So later on, we had a problem with it being very light and lumpy. Yeah. They actually had a problem with it being windy and lumpy. Yeah, right. And they had a moment, let's put it that way, on a jibe and crashed off the foils and allowed Luna Rossa back into it.
There you go. And then we beat the French in a proper ding-dong that we'll dissect in great length in a minute. But it's safe to say there are a lot of crosses. The boats were very rarely more than 100 metres apart, maybe until the final upwind. It was a proper sluggers match where you're exchanging blows. And then the final of the preliminary regatta, where we've taken all the points over the last 3 days. The two boats with the best scores went and raced each other. That was Emirates Team New Zealand and Prada. And congratulations to Emirates Team New Zealand, who won in, again, another close and exciting race here.
Yeah, and of course they've looked strong all regatta, but they were a little bit more vulnerable today, I would say. They lost against the Americans first off, and a real close race with Luna Rossa. I think some mistakes from both teams there, but of course they're excellent sailors. That both teams are fast, which made for a great race.
Right. Well, let's talk about what we know, Lee, because we very much lived in our race today. The race more than ever started 20 minutes before the entry with both jibs on deck, with a lot of communication going all around Barcelona about wind strengths at various areas, what's coming, what's the wind strength at the top of the course versus the bottom of the course. The jib call more than ever was crucial, but not obvious.
Yeah, it's a challenging direction, kind of when it's kind of from the east to the southeast, that direction. It's lifting up over the shore, so close to the shore it's quite light, and you only have to go a little bit offshore and it's quite windy, and you get these pulses of breeze, and they can hang in for an hour, or they can kind of pulse in only for a few minutes. So we're kind of living in that world of quite critical jib calls, and we kind of made the decision. We were just about to head off actually with the J, our J2, and it piped up, and we made the call to actually stop there, drop it, and just get both jibs on deck and concentrate on actually getting that call right, as opposed to doing a last little segment of training. So changed our plan a little bit, but it's a tricky direction, that. But thankfully, you know, we got it right.
Got the jib call right, absolutely. So we entered. The French entered a little bit late coming in from port, which means that they don't have right of way. We entered nicely on starboard. And Ian, for a moment there, us old school match racers like you and me, I was rubbing my hands together going, oh my goodness, we might have a dial up here, like the good old days.
Yeah, it looked like it was going to be. I think, funnily enough, the French were actually a little bit early coming back for their entry and had to get very slow so as not to get the penalty. And that was really what caused the situation. Here we go, and they're still a little slow, and that was the penalty for them there. Port boat not keeping clear of us on starboard.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a port boat not keeping clear. Lee, from that moment, you're then heading out to Coffin Corner, as it's called, down on the bottom left-hand corner as you look upwind, which isn't where you want to be heading in match racing world, but the breeze dropped to 7.4, 7.5 knots, and there was a bit of a call on board to focus in on our boat and the boat handling. What brings that call about?
Well, in that particular moment when we got the penalty on them, it obviously had dropped quite a bit, and ordinarily we probably would be wanting to kind of like re-accelerate and jibe and actually follow them, especially having got the penalty on them, and kind of set up for a good start. But it was so soft, we were really struggling to actually get the boat up and rumbling to get that jibe in. So we made the call to actually, having got the penalty, that a port tack start would be a better scenario. So keep the boat on the feet, get over to boundary, tack back. But again, we didn't quite have enough time to burn to get the port tack start in. Yeah. So we had to do
and that's what we're seeing here.
On the start line.
You actually wanted to launch off on port to the right-hand side of the course, but you effectively got there too early and had to tack back.
Exactly.
Then you were OCS'd.
The bow just went over the line as we tacked.
And then Ian, am I right in saying because we were OCS penalty, that negates the French penalty that they had earlier?
You nailed it. It's the most complicated
I listened to
rule.
Giles yesterday, you see.
It's the most complicated rule we have in the book. There are about 16 different scenarios, but yes, in that situation, because we were OCS less than 3 seconds, their penalty is scrubbed.
Okay. But, so then, with all of that done, we've had a nice little match racing incident. We've had high pressure boat handling manoeuvres, which wasn't the last high pressure boat handling manoeuvre. We're onto the race course. And the French took the lead up the first beat. They did a very nice job of keeping us behind. Kind of lee bow tacks and lots of tacks going up to the top mark, and the French led round the top gate as we turned downwind. And then we're into an international light air jibe off with lots of crosses, right, Leroy?
Yeah, there's a bit more pressure down the right-hand side of the course as you looked up the course, so kind of to the right of the screen here. And the French had, got a bit of a jump on us out of the top to that side, but then when we got further down, getting over to the other boundary, they did a jibe and obviously must have just about dropped off the foil. So we got a good piece of them and got a good gain on them, and that's what you're seeing at this moment here is us trucking back into them at 37 knots and then re-accelerating out of a dropped jibe, trying to get back onto the foil. So this is where we managed to get the jump on them.
And this was just halfway down the first downwind?
That's right, yeah. But then obviously the table then turned because we kind of split into the light corner. Yeah. And they kind of got into the high pressure side and kind of got back onto our heels again. So yeah, it was touch and go.
I've got to ask you tactically, the communication between you and Bledin and Dylan and Ben. How early on did you assess that the right-hand side was the side and the left-hand side was slightly softer, but you've got to go there because of the cost of paying too many manoeuvres to stay on the right?
It was also like the shift phase was massive as well, so it's trading off for the guys, for Ben and Dylan, that trade-off between how much of a bad shift you take to get to the pressure and taking those, taking that at the right time. So, it's not as simple as just kind of hugging the right. There was a lot of shift at play as well. So, it was, really challenging day in that sense. And on top of that, just, really hard to keep the boat locked in that sea state. It doesn't look very wavy on the camera, but, when you're on the boat and the foils are kind of like in and out of those waves, it's, it's definitely a wavy day.
And I think that's the thing that the stabilization on the cameras now and in the helicopters and in the camera boats and on the boats themselves is so good that you have no concept of just how loose it feels on board the boat as soon as the sea state's over maybe 0.8 of a metre.
Yeah, exactly. And today was kind of up over a metre on average and peaking at 1.4 to 1.5 metre waves. And it's like the boat is moving all over the place, and you're trying to kind of average out the good flat spots and the wavy spots, and transitioning through that, and particularly with that wind being so shifty, it was really challenging today. And I think we saw it was challenging for all the teams.
And for me as a Cyclor, every 30 seconds to a minute or so, one of the trimmers or the helms will say big wave coming here, and you'd think because we're foiling it wouldn't really sort of change much, but you basically drop out the sky. And for us it's really hard to put the power down into the pedals for you to catch the traveller to keep the boat driving forward, so it's hard all round. So we then moved into the second upwind, and the exchange of tacks and the crossing continued all the way upwind there as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. This clip here is actually the next jibe, next cross after the jibe. But then we moved on to the upwind here.
This is the upwind,
it. And so we did a split around the bottom, and again they were kind of hanging on to us because they, the natural entry into the gate, they were actually getting out to the slightly more pressured side, so they did make a game back on us on that first split. And we had quite a close cross, so Ben was calling for a high mode here, and we had a little bit of a wobble there as we, again in that sea state, trying to kind of change the mode of the boat, can really unsettle the balance and the balance on the rudder and things like that. So we had to get a high mode here because they were obviously kind of like hunting us up a little bit for a moment. But that was kind of us getting the cross, and the key here was that we're getting the cross and we're getting to the best side of the course for that moment. So I think that was the moment where we kind of got into the best breeze and actually got a step ahead and kind of took better control of the race.
Now Ian, being a 7-time, as we learnt the other day, 7-time world match racing champion, one of the best in the world at covering, at tacking in people's faces, shutting down a race course. Were the conditions today kind of that mixture between, yes, you want to shut down the race course and tack in people's faces and lee bow tack, versus, actually I might stand on to the 20 seconds and pick up another knot and a half of pressure? It's a fine balance, right?
Yeah, and actually probably not a fine balance today. Today's a connect the puff day. Ignore the other boat, sail your boat around the course as fast as you can, and try and do that better than the other boat. You just cannot afford to be tacking in the wrong wave set or in a lull. So, great, you go over, try and cover the other boat, but if when you get there you're in a bad spot, you're not going to be able to tack on them anyway. So yeah, very much a case of connecting the puffs, and the guys did a great job of it today.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And Lee, we got to the leeward mark with a lead, but the French were sailing very well, and there's absolutely no doubt that they've got a slippery boat in their hands there. It's a good boat, but we got down to the race was shortened, so it's the last turning gate before we finished up at the top of the finish. And we had a leeward mark rounding where you trim on the port side, you're effectively Dylan Fletcher's trimmer. And we came here at 33 knots, and it got a little bit wiggly underneath your buttocks there.
Yeah, exactly. The roundups are quite tricky, and particularly in the sea state, it's not a lot of clearance, and you're trying to get the grip on that foil, as you go around that mark. And if you get any sort of skid, then it can really, unsettle the boat. And you see in that we kind of, I think, had a bit of a skid and got the foil arm actually quite deep as well at the same time.
If you look at the foil arm on the left-hand side of picture, just see how sort of the water area moves over that. Must make the job of Bledin trimming that to leeward really hard, right?
Exactly. So he's trying to kind of fly that around the corner. But it was, we've been working on those manoeuvres and getting a lot better, but then you throw in the waves on top of it, and obviously kind of adds another dimension to it, and didn't get that one quite right.
There we go. And from that point, I'd like to say everyone involved with INEOS Britannia exhaled and were like, okay, they've got around the last leeward mark upwind and go and finish the race. But as I said, the French were sailing extremely well. One of the teams for me that I kind of look at, and they are on a nice trajectory of speed, so you have to sail very, very cutely against those guys to stay ahead. And Lee, that concludes the preliminary regatta. overall, we'd like to have finished higher up the league table, but a huge week of learning and sporting momentum is shifting in our favour and the trajectory's up. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, definitely. You know, we had a tricky start. The first, you know, 2 tough teams at the beginning, and you know, and I think we're learning absolutely heaps, and we've got a lot more to get out of the boat. You know, we've got a lot more to get out of our techniques and and we're learning all the time on that side of it, and you know, and like with Ian sat right here, and the pre-starts are a crucial part of the game, and you know, we've got a lot to put in. You know, it was great to put it into practice, and I think we've figured out some real key areas for us to home in on as we enter the round robins, and you know, that's obviously a part of the series that we need to really start getting some wins under our belt, and making sure that we're moving up through the regatta. But it's also, you know, kind of just getting on, like say, on that conveyor belt, and making sure that we're getting a really good understanding of the pre-starts and the racing kind of strategies, and yeah, so all to look forward to.
And Ian, being part of our coaching team, every day we do an hour to 90 minutes of sailing after our last race to continue the improvement. How big do you think that's been for us this week, to continue the learning as well as the racecraft?
It's massive, and you have to. I mean, it's the America's Cup, of course, but it's a match race regatta, and any match race regatta, the team that improves the most through the course of the event is the team that's going to win at the end. And so, yes, we've got to go out, prepare properly, and win races, but we also need to be improving our skills, improving our speed, our understanding all the way through, and really the level that Team New Zealand have won the regatta, the level they're sailing at now is not going to be good enough. We know that. We're definitely going to be above the level now, but they're going to get up as well. So we've got to improve faster than they have to beat them in the end.
Learn better than the others and try and come out on top.
Exactly.
Ian, we're going to move to our questions that we get through on social media, and it is perfect that you are here. A question from Facebook: why do we not see more split tack starts?
I've got to say, it's a shame there's not a name, because whoever's asked that question knows what they're talking about.
Right.
The reason is that although it's quite a long start line, 0.2 nautical miles sounds like a long way, in the speed we go, it's very short in time terms. It's depending on the wind speed, it's only about 20 seconds long. A normal match race start is more like 30 seconds long. And so there's not much time for both boats to split off. But interestingly, we've seen the Kiwis employ the split tack start a bit in their practice, and also at least once out here. And so one of my jobs is to study that, try and learn from them, and work out how we can achieve that as well.
So I've got a question for you. Do you think that everybody's shown their complete playbook of pre-starts in this preliminary regatta, or do you think moving into the round robins it will get more freestyle?
I think everybody's learning fast. That's what I think. I think the game is going to move on. I think once people realise what these boats can do compared to the last Cup in Auckland, everybody's handling is way further forward than it was then. And as people learn exactly how much they can do, I think we're going to see more and more action in the pre-start.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It's going to be a massive, and we recognise just how massive that part of the game is going to be. Right, here's a question from Monty. How do the cyclists warm up for a racing on a race day and recover for it? I mean, it's a half an hour spin in the morning, a good bit of rolling around on our red mats, a bit of yoga, a bit of stretching, all try and get a bit bendy. We try and keep a light mood there because we know we're in for a kicking for the rest of the day. Push off the dock. We do 2 lots of half an hour warming up on the boat, like dialing the boat in for Lee and the trimmers, getting everything dialed in for us and making sure that we're in tune with the boat as well. And then we do one last stop. My favourite bit of the America's Cup is the stop from 25 to 5 minutes, where everything kind of comes together. The coaches are on board. You get your tough head on, and you know that you're going to go into battle from that point. You then go and do a max heart rate effort for the race. Then you come in, have an ice bath and a protein shake, and breathe out. So yeah, it's a pretty busy day for us lot to be here, to be honest. But yeah, Lee's twisting his little knobs too much, so we have to keep keep cycling. Right. Question from Gerald. Ian, how different is match racing foiling versus non-foiling? Great question.
Well, yeah, it is a great question. I think it's a lot of the same stuff, just at 4 or 5 times the speed, and so yeah, a lot of the moves are the same as we do in the displacement displacement boats, but we have to do it super quick, react super quick.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big things is the helms have got so much on just steering the boat that the decision making is that much more difficult. They've got to trim the jib and whatever else is at the same time. And so that's really the challenge, is making all these quick tactical decisions while still sailing the boat to the best of their abilities, especially on a day like today.
Absolutely. Right, Lee, just done 7 days of non-stop sailing. We've done 4 of those have been race days. Have a breath out, mate. Like, that was a big week, right, for us within the team. We start racing for points. This is Sunday night. We start racing for points on Thursday. What do the next 4 days look like for the team?
Yeah, so we a bit of a breather tomorrow. Still be plenty going on, meetings, analysis, debriefs, and what have you. But yeah, trying to get a bit of time out of the base, and then Tuesday we're back on the water training. Still working on techniques, perfecting that. We've learned a lot over the last 4 days, and we just kind of actually need to really home in on the best we can possibly do. So that will be Tuesday and Wednesday, and straight into racing Thursday. So a small breath, and then it's full on from there.
How good. Could not be more excited, to be honest. So there you go. As Lee said, straight into racing on Thursday. It's a double round robin where the Kiwis are still involved at this moment in time. Our first race is against American Magic on Thursday. It's race number 3, and we are racing for points. And we know that the top 4 teams from the round robin are going to go into the semi-finals and go on from there into the Challenger Series finals. The winner of that will go on to race Emirates Team New Zealand in the match for the 37th America's Cup. So we're getting pretty close to go time, boys, and we could not be more excited about it. And as you know, we're taking you on the journey with us, and we are going to be doing the Inside Tack every day, and you can join our debriefs as we go into the round robins. And thank you guys for joining us.
Pleasure.
And we'll see you next time on the Inside Tack.